Good. There we are. I'll just stick that over there. Then let's just wait and see what happens. Goody goody gumdrops. There we are. So I have gone live just a little bit early, and that is just fine. It's part of life, and at least it means I know that the system is working quite nicely, which is always a positive, isn't it? Always a positive. Let's just swap some of these down. I don't think I need that, but I think we might have the weathered wood. That might work. Shabby shutters would also work because it's a beautiful pale green. But there we are. Good afternoon, Connie. Thank you for joining me. It's nice to know that I'm not alone in the house this afternoon. Hopefully you can see and hear me without any problems. A few of you are coming in now. That looks like maybe notifications and things have sorted themselves out and are working. That's always helpful. Went to set up the live this morning, and the Book of Face said you can only invite 50 people. Sometimes it lets me invite 300, sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 50. It appears to have a complete rule unto itself. Hence the posting that I couldn't invite everyone, and I don't wish to offend anyone because that's not nice, is it? Good evening, Sheila. Hello, Gillian. If someone could confirm that they can hear me okay, that would be fabulous, because I have the sound switched off on all of my devices, so we don't end up with multiple echoes, because that's really unpleasant on the ears. I know you can see me because I'm screening on my phone without any problems. There we are. So we've got a bit of stuff out on the deck. Thanks, darling, much appreciated. We've got a whole mountain of gubbins on our desk, and let's just tuck all of these bits off to the side, over there, over there. I've got stuff all around me today. Thank you, Connie, which is designed to be different. Oh, here she says, ripping a piece of paper that was cut to size. But obviously a bit tight. So I have a shadow box, a canvas frame here that comes from a cheap shop. And when you buy cheap, you can expect it not to be completely accurate in size, but it's about 8 inches. Yeah, 20 centimetres, about 8 inches, which is actually quite a nice size for crafting with. But I can see that this piece of canvas is overlapping where I don't want it to be, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a haircut, and then we're going to tackle that, because as we all know, I don't like bits of canvas overflapping, and there we are. Nor do I like it when it looks like that, but that's okay. We have ways and means of resolving all of that with a bit of my go-to for hiding things, some structure paste. Hello, Bonnie, thank you for joining us from Denmark. Do you speak reasonable English? Because I don't speak any of your native language, I'm afraid, which is not good to admit, but I don't. So this is literally just the pen touch structure paste. I've got about 5 pots of it, so unfortunately you're going to see me using it an awful lot, but it's great for adding texture, and it's also great for hiding staples, and I dislike seeing staples on the side of my things, and I didn't particularly want to cover this today with paper, which is an alternative. So let's just, if I stick some of that underneath there, it'll help gum it down, because that's what goes on, isn't it? So if I run out of this, I've got plenty I can grab, which is also always helpful. So I'm just going to pop that into here, cover those edges. It will shrink back a bit. I'm going to cover all of the edges. That's fine. I don't have any issues with that. Let's just stick a bit of that underneath there. Push it down. It will just help glue glue it into place. I know using a structure paste as a glue is an interesting concept, and a lot of, but it just works for me. And so, and you can see that I'm not using masses. We'll have used a reasonable amount by the time we get around the whole thing. But if it doesn't bother you having the edge of the canvas on display, don't worry about it. It's just something that I have a particular bugbear about, and I know I've got masses of this, so I can pick more up as I want to. There we are. So let's just carry on. That one's better round. We will. Yeah, it's the usual headache, isn't it? 5 hands required for doing everything, but that's okay. And a lot of this, it will get covered, but it's just going to, I don't know, it neatens things up. It's just so much better than just leaving the edges exposed. As I say, if it doesn't bother you having the edges exposed, then don't worry about it. But I really dislike the staples showing. And I suppose you could pull them out and then glue it into place. I am going to have to walk over and get a new pot of this, I think. Maybe, possibly. There we are. Let's just stick that down there. And then we're going to put 2 sides now that I need to do, because I like the edges to match. There we are. Get some of that off and pop that here. It's always going to be a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Of course it is. There we are. Don't need thick layers, just I want it to work round, and it look like maybe it's stone effect, maybe it's just some texture. That bit's solid, so let's get rid of that. Let's just pop that onto there. It just means that I like things to be finished all round. Where's that lumpy? I just hit a bit that's of paste that is quite hard. There we are. Don't need really thick layers of it either, because otherwise we might be here waiting for it to dry just a little bit too long. So I trust everyone is well on a Sunday afternoon. I don't know if anyone's watching the Italian Grand Prix. That's what my son's doing today. There we are. And I'm going to be using the Timeless collection from Stamperia. I have to say that I've got some mixed feelings about it. I think it's very pretty. I'm not convinced that it's Holy Wedding, although it's badged sort of as that. I'm not too sure what hot air balloons have to do with weddings, but on the plus side, the fact that they're there means that actually the papers, I think, become usable for lots of different things. Good evening, Teresa. Right, I've just seen your comment, literally, so hopefully you can now hear me. Is anyone else having problems hearing me? Please feel free. It's always, just to say it. I was a little bit sitting a bit further away from the mic than I sometimes do, so that might explain why you weren't hearing me so very well. Let's see if we can manage to use this use this pot up. And so, as I say, this is Pentart structure paste. It has a grittiness to it, and it just makes life a bit easier all the way around. And it does mean I can cover, because it's a structure paste, the bits that irritate me. I get that it may just be me that doesn't like the edges of the staples on the canvas on display, but I can go underneath there. I'll just shove a bit underneath into there, squash it down. That will help glue that into place. There we are. Aha, that's a hard lump. So let me just grab a baby wipe to get rid of that one. Thank you, Bonnie. As I say, I don't know. I do have a friend who is learning your language. I think I might be wrong. I think the lovely Liz Wheeler is learning. I think she has family in Denmark, and that's why she's been learning. Let's just tidy up some of this. We'll have a little tidy up at some stage. There we go. As I say, I'm getting to the end of this pot, so I'm aware that I've got areas that are a bit thicker than I might otherwise choose. Let's just squash that. So I'm lifting between that because it's a bit flappy. Pop that into there, and then if I squash it down, it'll flatten the whole thing down, but it will help it not lift up, which is also quite helpful. So let's just pop this into here, pop that over there onto the edges of there, and carry on just working our way round bit by bit. There we are. It's just worth it. Well, it's worth it to me. As I say, if it doesn't bother you, don't stress about it. Good afternoon, Isabel. Welcome. Right, so let's just. We're going to get to a bit where I'm going to get messy. It's inevitable. Yeah, I know it's inevitable. There we are. Let's cover that bit. That's okay, because I've got bits everywhere. There we are. That's a hard lump of that, so let's just get rid of, move that out of the way, and let's just fish out what we can out of this pot and hope that I don't have to go walkabouts and go and get another pot. Oh, she says, dropping it on her top or down her front. Attractive look. Maybe not. There we are. Okie dokie. So that's a bit that's a bit hard, so let's just pop that round there, cover that over there, turn this round. Right. Hold that over there and then hope that means that we don't end up with we're getting too messy, too late, too early in a make. So I can feel a hard lump there. I'm just going to lift it out. Let's say I'm getting to the end of that pot of paste, and she says throwing a stencil on the floor. When I can't find it, when I want it, ladies, please just remind me that I've shoveled my stencil on the floor, because that was clearly an intelligent move. Not. Let's get rid of that bit. Okay, that's a bit more that needs to come off there. When it's not spreading, it's because there's a hard lump there, and you see, I've got little hands. It really doesn't make some of this very easy. There we are. Let's just smooth it approximately. Doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. I'm not fastidious. I almost want a bit of texture. I don't want it to be too rough though. There we are. We are going to need just a little bit more of that. Let's just pop that into there. Cover. If I stick that there and squash that down, that will help. So it is quite useful for adding as a bit of glue. Is this? And this is where I'm going to be balancing at an uncomfortable height, just while I tackle this. There we are. Oh, and then we're going to use what's left of here. See, my hands are not big enough. I know they're not. I'm going to end up mucky. There we are. Let's just stick that into there. Flick that round. Stick some of that into there underneath, and then let's tackle that mess in that corner, and those are areas that I want to have a little bit better cover. We will end up with some colours going down there, but there we are. Hopefully look out of the way. There we are. And that is just determined to being a flipping nuisance, is that. There we are. So hopefully we've got reasonable amounts of coverage there. Just need a little bit more. Into there. Okay. Good. Well, that was a trauma. That can go in the bin because, as I say, I've got 4 pots of the stuff, and it's definitely got a hard lumpy piece inside it. And we don't want hard lumpy pieces, do we? No, of course we don't want hard lumpy pieces on things. Right, let's just wipe the hands. I know, messy hands. 15 minutes in and I have filthy hands. Not a good look, not a good look. There we are, let's just move that, and then let's just pop that off to the side. Excuse me while I scrape. I know that that's not necessarily a pleasant sound. There we are. And then let me pop that to the side. And I've got stuff so I can't actually see who's commenting because Facebook's not telling me again. I do like a book of face when it decides to be a pain in the proverbial. So let's see who has joined us. Hi, as I said, hello to Angela. Good evening, Sue. Hello, Sarah. Good evening, Julie. Welcome, welcome. There we are. Good. So can everyone else hear me? I know Teresa said she couldn't, but no one else has commented. So I'm assuming that you probably can all hear me. That might need to be a little bit smaller, but that's also okay. Right. Because I'm a numpty, I'm just going to grab one more paste and pick up that stencil that I forgot, that I dropped on the floor. So there are some interesting stencils in the Timeless collection. I showed the heart one the other day. Let me find something black to pop that against, which I think is really useful. And then there's this one which is sort of irregular random spots, but I think it might add a little bit of interesting texture. So I'm just going to add it in some areas. So this piece I have cut from the collection. It's beautiful. If I lift it up, we've got the base colour, which is actually a combination of colours. We've got some damask type background. There's a stamp that matches that, text, and also some crackle. And this collection actually has lots and lots and lots of backgrounds. Do I want modelling paste light? No, I do not want modelling paste light. There we are. Oh, we want some sparkle. We want some sparkle. So there we are. We'll pick up the right pot. You could add some sparkle with the modelling paste light. You could literally just put the modelling paste light down, which has got a white background, and then sprinkle some glitter on the top or micro beads. and essentially use it as a glue. But this is rainbow paste. It's a white paste with bits of sparkly stuff in it, and it's based on gel medium, and it dries clear. So we'll just add a little bit of that up there. I think we'll add a little bit of that over there. Don't want it all over, so that's okay. And we'll add a little bit down there, and then we'll pop that off to the side to dry. Good afternoon, Anna. Welcome, welcome. Now, thank you, Sarah Jane. So that, I think, is all I need for that. So I suppose now, because the rainbow paste is based on a gel medium, you could use Stamperia's snow paste or Arctic paste. They've both got a sparkle in them, but that's the one I have, or any other sparkly medium that dries clears, just to add a little extra into the background. But because that is based on a gel medium, I'm just going to make sure it's properly clean before I put the stencil to the side, because once that has set, it will be set solid. Do I want that one? Which one is open? Let me see. Aha, that primer paste is open. So I have not primed my pieces today, intentionally, because I need time for the others to dry. But I have 3 hot air balloons. That's the word I'm looking for. Let me just move that, and then you might be able to see my face. Not that it's a particularly attractive face, but there you are. You might be able to see my face rather than just the top of my head. But yeah, you see, that's better, isn't it? So this are cast with amazing casting resin. It is a dries white or slightly creamy resin. This is the biggest of the hot air balloons in the mould, and it is approximately 12.5 centimetres, so 4.5 inches ish. So it's quite a big piece. Yeah, I know, little hands are not helpful, are they? And I've shrunk because I'm trying to behave. And the pool where I go, the health club I go, the gym I go to has been being renovated. So I thought, rather than do nothing for the 6 weeks it was projected, now 8 weeks, because nothing ever goes to time, does it? I would get a personal trainer, because I need I need a focus or a reason for getting out and shifting mass, because I really don't like exercise very much. Not that it would don't need it, but I just don't like it anyway. So because I've signed up for another round, because the gym isn't going, the pool's not quite ready, and actually the session so far just proved that I really do need to do something alternative to just the aqua aerobics that I love, because I need some, it's clearly not enough to keep me fit. He measured me. Now I don't know how much I weigh, because I didn't want him to tell me, because I know I'm too big, and that I would find depressing, and I didn't want to know my body fat percentage, because quite frankly it's ridiculously high, and I didn't need it reinforcing, because I know it's already ridiculously high, and I am already making some lifestyle changes. However, so he measured all of those, so he knows what they are, bless him. And then but he did measure my height, because he needed the height to input for my body fat percentage, and I shrunk 1 centimetre over the last few years. Always helpful to know, isn't it, when you start out vertically challenged in the first place, that you've shrunk. Now, I had the lovely Liz Wheeler down with me yesterday, and like a well-behaved child, I have clearly unplugged my heater. So there we are, that's better. We'll run this over the things that I know I want. onto the floor, so we'll just pick it up. There we are. And then we're going to give these a little bit of a brush dry before we... I'll stick them over there, then I can see my phone. Hiya Anna, thank you Sarah Jane for letting me know that you can see me. So I just need to get these a bit dry. So I'm going to go coordinating colours. Also, I feel your pain, because overall I think I've probably also shrunk about that, but it's not good as you get older, is it? But there you are, it is part of life, I'm afraid. When I only started out at just over 5 foot, being told that you're 149 centimetres, so under 5 foot, wasn't my favourite activity, because it now means I've got even more weight to lose because I'm that much shorter. Anyway, it is what it is, and something will get done about it. Good afternoon, Ari. Welcome to my friends in the USA. Lovely to see you here. If any of you are watching, I would appreciate you sharing. If you can, you possibly can't, because I've gone live from an event. I know it's not always possible to do that, but if you can, that would be lovely. Because I'm using the florals from the Timeless collection, and there's lots of florals and lots of backgrounds in the collection, and not too many focal pieces of imagery. And the bride and groom is actually predominantly on the accessories, so on the washi tape, the die ephemera, and the die cuts, and the fussy cut bits of the papers. So actually the papers themselves are just beautiful papers, so it could be used for anything that you wanted that was really taupey coloured or a beautiful sagey green. Yeah. Is that dry? Yeah, I think those might just about be dry. So let's just pop that onto there, pop that there. So I've just picked out some colours. So if I pick up this piece of paper from the collection, she says fiddling, or these two pieces of paper from the collection. So we've got a green in the collection, which, as I say, is beautiful. And I rather think that works very well with it, and that is Pentart's Country Green. And then we've got several shades of blue. The ones that Stamperia recommend are Aviation Blue and Baby Blue, which, I mean, they certainly will work, but I also think that the Country Blue will work as well, and obviously white will work in with it for that. And I wanted something different to go for the baskets for the hot air balloons. And I don't have turtle dove, but I do have nougat Torrentino, but that's nougat and cookie. And I think that those will work with those colour tones on there. So that's when I'm working out and I've got ivory out as well. So when I'm deciding what I'm going to do for my painting of pieces, I look at the pieces that I've got and the colours of the papers that I'm going to use, and I've picked ones that will coordinate, because I'm a coordinated type of girl. But if you wanted to do an abstract, paint your own background, or just go really bright primary colours, the joy of the backgrounds is that they are neutral. So you could go complete contrast with these, and and absolutely use use your primary colours. I might yet do that for Pentart's Live, which is very different to this. next week, because I've got a very different project planned. Right, so let's see what we want. Oh, and yes, I've got that out, but I haven't got the white antiquing gel out. That'll be happening then, won't it? We'll be wandering off to get that. So find reasonably sized brushes. We are going to need an ultra small one, I think, as well, because we've got these ones are particularly small, so they're not gonna. That's not gonna work. That's solid. That can go in the bin. That's been my bad for not looking after it very well. There we are. But that's nice and soft. There we are. Oh, and there's 2 more on the floor. That's always good to know. Hi Kay, welcome. So let's just go with, I think we might have a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and yeah, let's just go with it. So I don't need that quite so small for the large one. So this is the country blue. There we are, and let's just do the top of this. And I can see bits of resin where it's over poured at the top, so let me just give that little hairy coat, a little haircut, because it's nice soft. I could get a file out, I guess, and just, there we are, that's better, and file it off. And let's just add in this into here. So we're going to go tonal. Well, we're going to go with colours that I think coordinate rather than contrast with the collection, and we'll see where we get on. There we are. Don't have a problem with going over lines if that's the way the cookie crumbles. Excuse the pun, as we've got cookie paint out on the desk. Yeah, so we're going to end up, so we're just going to be, and we'll go over it. It's going to be quicker to do this and then add some colour back over the ropes, rather than trying to be fastidious about it in the painting at this stage. There we are. And sometimes you just have to be kind to yourself with what you're doing, because life is too short otherwise, isn't it? Of course it is. There we are. We will be changing the colour of those, so underneath is not such a problem, but let's just come over there. So as I say, this is the biggest piece in that mould, and it is fairly humongously big. I have to be fair and say it's not a small piece of resin. You definitely would, almost one in a 6x6 frame or an 8-inch shadow box deep frame, with congratulations, all the birth weights of a boy or of a child, all in time, would work quite nicely, I think. So lots of options. It could just be, as I say, I think the collection is aptly named. It is absolutely timeless. There we are. There's 2 florally bits at the top, so let's just whack that on that top bit. Well, there's actually 3, but hey ho, and then we'll come in and neaten up afterwards. And then let's just add a blue border into here. So I know I can come back in. This is the first layer. It won't matter that if I've gone over, because once it's dry it will sort itself out. So this one might prove a bit more of a challenge. I don't want them all particularly to be the same blue. There we are, so we might pop that onto there. I'm going to leave that. I like to put the top of that together there, but on there, and then let's just do some extra bits on this one. and then we can come back in with the country green. There we are. Oh, she says. There we are. That will work for the time being on there. You see, and then we've transferred blue paint where we don't necessarily want it. Thank you, Teresa. Can you hear me all right now? You don't need, Ari, you don't need decoupage paper. Any paper will work with the die cutting, but okay, so you don't have a die cutting machine, so you so that one of the, let me go and get, hang on a minute, darling, excuse me ladies, just while I answer Ari's question, because yes, it is in this collection. Okay. So I wouldn't necessarily die cut with decoupage paper, but you can glue any decoupage paper onto onto ordinary card and then cut it out by hand. And this particular paper from the collection would work very well for doing that. Or you could put it onto stone paper. Once it's dried on the white cardstock, you can then fussy cut out of it. I'd use a lightweight cardstock, so perhaps 100 GSM for, as you're in the States, 120, and then you'll be able to cut them out and shape them with the shaping kit without any problems. I've got a different plan for this, so watch this space. The alternative, Ari, if you want to use this paper, is to coat it with multiple layers of the decoupage glue and varnish, and it will thicken up quite nicely, probably 7 or 8 coats drying in between, and then you can cut out and shape the pieces that way. So lots of several options for using that. Whilst we're on, I am going to be using the 4 of the die sets on my Pentart Live on Tuesday, because I got sent an email by the lovely DT coordinator, and I love Sylvie. She's lovely, don't get me wrong, but she when I get an email from her, there's nearly always an ulterior. Sometimes it's genuinely to say, your DT pack is due, please order what you want, and that's fine. So this is the country green, ladies, but sometimes it's definitely there's an ulterior motive, and this time she sent me Pentart's newsletter, which I'd already got because I get it automatically because I shop from their website because I'm on the DT, and that's how we order what I want, which is lovely. So I said to her, does that mean you'd quite like me to use some of these things that are on here that you have, because they distribute the Stamperia, which is why I use a lot of Stamperia with my Pentart products. And she said, that would be nice. Okay. So I'm going to be using the dies on that. But just a word to the wise, if you have got a die cutting machine and like the look of the envelope die, I've got an old Big Shot machine, okay, and the envelope die is bigger than the platform, doesn't fit on the platform for the Big Shot. So you definitely need a bigger platform. Right, let's see if we can come into here. I might swap to a more delicate brush at this point. So you just need to be aware of that, I think, and they haven't, none of them have, they haven't said that on, you know, on yeah, the sizes are the overall size of the packet size, but the biggest piece doesn't. All of the other dies will fit through a big shot or an A5 sized machine comfortably, but as I say, that there is one that just won't. I tried every angle I could possibly get it to go through at, and I just couldn't get it to work from that. So you just need to be absolutely aware of that, I think, because I don't want someone buying a die set thinking that they'll manage with the machine they've got if they've only got a small machine. It just doesn't seem very fair. It is a lovely sized envelope, because they've compromised on that side of it, but as I say, that it's not necessarily helpful if you've only got a small machine. Let's see if I can see where that's it. So that's just come across there, and we'll add in the strings later on. Okay, and we'll tackle that messiness because we can. And this one is so small, I'm not going to even try adding lots of that detail in. It's just, yeah, and there, I think, no, these are the small. No, there are even smaller hot air balloons in this mould. There it is. Okay, so let's just do that and that. Give those a little bit of a dry. Hi Liz, welcome. I don't know, Sarah, I don't think it matters. I think you just have to pick the size one that you want. I personally prefer a Sizzix, but you know, that's probably because I had a die cutting machine well before the Spellbinders arrived in the UK. So but you pay your money, takes your choice. It's more about the size of the machine that's important for this one, I'm afraid, rather than the make of the machine. But you know, use the one you've got. You definitely don't need multiple die cutting machines, even though every company would try and tell you you do. You definitely, you know, you might want to listen. To be fair, you might want a baby machine and a big one. The baby one, because it can sit on your desk, because my A4 platformed one is, because it's a Sizzix one, is way too big. Yeah, it's just too big to sit on my desk, so I have to drag it out each time I want it. And to be fair, the Spellbinders one is a bit smaller but than that, so you know, there's ways and means and what's rights and wrongs, isn't there, for all of these things. So I want a paler blue, because this bit between the basket is going to be sky, isn't it? I think that's better. Not rope. So that's why I've chosen to colour mix that together. I'm just going to look a little bit better for doing that. But as I say, it doesn't have to be realistic, of course it doesn't. So let's just make a blob of that and a little blob of that and mix that together and hope that we're going to get something vaguely similar. Oh, there we are, that will do. So I've got a pale, because I've mixed cream, ivory, which is a version of cream, with the the blue. I've got some yellow tones that are are now in this paint. Okay, so it's a pale soft bluey green that's in there, and that's fine. When the pieces are this small, you just have to go with the flow, and you put what you can in where you can, and we'll neaten it all up anyway. So let's just take some of this cookie. Yeah, no, you see, I'm inclined to agree, and as I don't have one, guess what my next purchase might be? Hang on a minute to answer to your question, Sarah Jane, because yes, I think you can make jewellery from them. Let me just pop these over here. Yeah, see, I'm being helpful today. So that's the biggest of the moulds, and then we've got, so that would make a good size pendant or a brooch. These little ones, you could probably get away with this one as a little earring, depends on how heavy you want to be, and that one would make a good stud earring. Now don't ask me why I've got those laid out sort of like that, because I'm giving secrets away for something in a couple of weeks time, and I'm not meant to do that, but hey ho. There we are. Let's just cover those edges. There we are. Yes, I think I am going to end up absolutely having to get a smaller machine. Particularly if I don't die cut very often, and I'm sort of wondering if I don't die cut very often because it's such a faff to get the machines out, because if you could see my desk, you'd know that there is more on my desk than is humanly sensible to have. Now don't write any sarcastic comments in the comments, Mrs. Wheeler, because Liz was down here yesterday, and to be fair, I had cleared a space for her. I was a nice friend. I didn't expect her to work in 0.5 millimetre a space. There we are. One basket. There we are. So let's just pop that onto there. That onto that one. So I think that cookie's working quite nicely. And you can back to back these. They're all symmetrical, so they will back to back. So if you wanted to make a little mobile for a child's room, I think you could do that quite successfully if you wanted to, by backing them. Maybe just, and as you put the two together, sandwiching it in a piece of string or some narrow fabric would work quite nicely. There we are. Let's just add in that little bit up there, and I'm going to wax the ropes because it's going to be easier, and I'm all about making my life easy. So there is a little basket on the end of that. Not much detail in that, but we can add that in. See, for me, yeah, there's only 3 moulds on this piece. I know, what was I thinking? Horror of horrors. But actually the space is quite small. So there we are. Okay, let's just pop that there. Pop the lids on these and clean up the mess. Yeah, Okay, that sounds like we've got at least 2 people, and I know Liz feels the same way, so that's 3 people in the audience who absolutely agree that a small die cutting machine is the way to go, and then drag out the big one only when you need it. The problem is that there are definitely dies that I have that need an A4 machine. So when my A4 spellbinders grand caliber from eons ago, because it was pink or raspberry coloured, gave up the ghost, I bought this. I couldn't just walk down and get, and I needed a machine there and then, so, and I could walk down and get the acidics from my local hobby craft. I know, horrors, but when you need something, you need something, and I didn't have time to wait for the following day. Right, so that's those, but they look a bit flat for the moment. They won't do, I promise they won't do. But I am just going to get some, well, I have out actually some of that dark blue patina. Now I think it might just be a little too dark, but I can always go over with white if I don't like it. So this is from Stamperia, and there are a couple of shops I know in the UK that have it in stock. So let's just have this in. It's just going to add, it's like an antiquing gel essentially. It's going to cover it in, fill in lots of those details, just allow me to access and see all the pieces. Yes, I know I haven't varnished this, but this isn't a piece that I'm intending to have around, you know, to last for eons. It's going to go off for a TV sample, and that means that that's better. Let me just pick up the rust one. That's worked quite nicely. I do have the rust one. I'm sure I have a rust one. Blue, grey, white. There we are. Well, that blue worked very nicely. I know, horror of horrors, I'm getting out a new one. That's because my older one had given up the ghost. Actually, I'd used it so much on steampunky things that I'd used it all up, so why not? Actually, before we do that, why not just click, before we end up with a mess, let's just do this on that smaller one. So you can, you know, with the antiquing stuff, you can be, you know, a little bit more specific. It's just, things aren't clean in nature, are they? Yeah? They're just not. So it just makes life a little bit easier. Right, that can go there. We can wipe off some of that. Wipe off some of that. There we are. Oopsie daisy. Right, let's just take that nice brush and some of the new rust patina. Yeah. Well, mine only gave up the ghost. Two Christmases ago, because I was prepping for a Dawn Bibby one day special on Create and Craft, because she couldn't do the whole of the one day special, and so I was asked if I would do the second day, and that meant I needed a die cutting machine that was just going to I didn't have time to get a Spellbinders one, which I know she is the one that she uses lots. So let's just come into here, take out as much of that as we can. There we are. That's better. That's better. Let's just cover the mess. There we are. Right, you see, and you always, so this is why I like my tubs, because I can dunk in to a tub, whereas if I've got a tube, you squidge out what you want, don't you? And then you end up with way more than you actually need. Oh, absolutely not. The handle broke off mine because I was trying to, you know, I had, you know, the dies were incredibly intricate and they just, yeah, but I asked too much of it. It was totally my fault. I'm sure it would have still been going fine if it hadn't been for there we are. So that now's looking a little bit nicer than it was. This is just gold wax. Antique copper would work probably just as well, because that would add something to look a little bit more like the ropes. Or you could spend hours painting in each of those ropes. Be my guest if that's what floats your boat, but that wasn't going to work for me. Right, eeny meeny miny. So let's just pop those over there out of the way. That can go over there out of the way. That's cool. Let's just see how dry this frame is, because I'm going to need to get it dry. I don't need the flour. That just needs a bit of a blast. So let's get this complete, you know, drier than it is. So I'm going to give it a spritz. Now I've got on the side, because I have them already pre-prepared, some of the dark grey vintage patina and also some brown metallic reserve, antique reserve gel in spray bottles with some water. I don't particularly want to spray those pieces of paper. Let's just put those over there, and I'm going to add in some of this, the blue, into it, but I'm not going to put that in a separate spray bottle because life's too short. So this is literally the vintage patina in dark grey, you see, and it's clogged up the bottle, but that's fine. Let's do it this way, and let's see it. And this is a brown, you see, and that one's clogged up. You see, that's what happens when you don't look after your sprays. But hey ho, let's stick that in there, that in there. Get a big fluffy brush, and let's just, big fluffy brush, she says, that will do. So let's just add some bits of this. I've got some water on the side, that is in a spray brush, that will work. Let's contaminate them, because why not? See, these are all going to merge anyway, because that's the whole intention, so it won't matter that I'm mixing them like this. Let's just give this a good squidge with some water. And then we can carry on moving these about a little bit. And then we'll give it a good dry. Let's soften that blue, because it's a bit in your face, isn't it? That is definitely still too wet over there, but that's okay. We'll get some muddy colours, and that's also okay. We're going to have to get this dry before we can. There we are. Well, that's conveniently gone down most of those sides. Let's just cover the top of this bit a little bit better. There we are. Let's just give that a jolly good clean and hope we haven't sprayed too much stuff around the place, and then that's going to need to have a really good dry. There we are, and that can go over there, and we'll pop that one out of harm's way over there, and we will be dry brushing that, but its colour is going to change quite a lot as it dries. So let's just lift this up. And now get everything as dry as possible. So by lifting it up, the heat is going to go through to the back of the canvas at the same time, so that it doesn't just stay wet on the surface. Thank you. It's just a super easy way of doing a frame. Having an absorbent material definitely helps matters. But it works. And you know, if you wanted it all one colour, you could paint it just all one colour. Thank you, Teresa. That's much appreciated. Don't worry, Alison. Looking after the grandchildren is way more important. They will remember that forever, and the time you spend together. So I just need to get this properly dry. It's still very wet in the middle because I need to put a piece of paper in here, and a piece of paper is not going to stick too wet, is it? Of course it's not. So I can still feel that it's sopping wet. So bear with, ladies, because we've got everything else ready. It is literally, once this is dry, a question of putting everything together and making it all come together. And all projects, I think, go through a stage where you just have to take a time out and just let you've got all the components, you know where it wants to go, but it's so not worth rushing at this point in time. And I do want to add a little bit of dry brushing to mute some of this blue down. And I can't do that whilst the surface is wet, because it will just move it all about. So we'll get there. You just have to give it the time it takes to do that. I can feel that it's drying under my hands. Now the answer is not to put it down in the wet, isn't it, ladies? Hang on a minute, just while I grab a towel and mop up that wet, and because otherwise we're going to pop it down onto a wet surface, and that's also not going to help. There we are. That can go on to that. We're getting there. So it's just hopefully some of that will absorb into that tray underneath. It's not completely dry, but that's okay. It's a good way of making a rusty, you know, a rusty frame or a distressed frame. And because the paste is not dry through and through, the colours will absorb in to some extent. Now the piece of paper might need a little bit of a haircut to get into here, but that's okay. That's definitely still wet over there. Because we just squashed it. Problem with sided objects, isn't it? You've got all the different sides that need to dry. It's definitely still wet in there, so just be patient. It's not as bad as it was. I don't want the colour coming onto the paper though. You need to just be patient. Patient's not my middle name, is it? It's just not. Okay, that's probably dry enough. Possibly. Maybe not. Oh yeah. Okay. Now that way will work. Let's dry brush with the primer paste. The joy of the pent-up primer paste is it's nice and thick, and therefore it dry brushes quite nicely. Let's take off most of that. The key with dry brushing is as its name suggests. Just going to knock that blue back. It's definitely still a bit wet. So if you're doing this, just wait, be patient, be kind to yourself. If I end up with some of the white paste showing through, I'm not going to be overly concerned, but yeah. There we are. Just helps bring out the day. I will re-dry brush this after when it's dried, and before I photograph. Might be a bit of a struggle because of the stuff on the top, but we'll see. There we are. I think that looks just a little bit better than it did. Right, pop that into there, lid that. It just makes such a huge difference, dry brushing, ladies. Well, yeah, again, if you don't like the look, don't add it. But for me, it absolutely works. There we are. And we'll pop a hot glue gun on. I know I hear you say hot glue gun, but sometimes you just have to. You just have to. There we are. That can go into there to heat up. We've got more of those to hand, so let's just pop that there. Right, let us see. Let's get rid of... That's not too bad, actually. It's not too bad. Let us just see now. So that's just going to need 1/2 centimetre off two sides. because, oh, she says, having, there we are, never mind. Don't bash your project with your trimmer. Let's just take off 1/2 centimetre there. And 1/2 centimetre now. It's not worth the struggle that I'm going to have if I don't do that to get this into here. See, even that's going to be a fiddle, isn't it? So let's put some glue down into here, and then we can slide it into place. So this is Pentart's Express glue. It's just, all I'm doing is asking it to hold a bit of paper. And that's just, so that is going to tuck under there, under there, under there, under there, under there, into there. There we are. And I can just shovel it up a little bit and over a little bit. There we are. So we now have a little bit of a sparkly background from my paste that has dried. You can squash that in. There we are. Give that a little push down. Could it have done with being a little bit bigger? Yeah, but I'm not going to stress. There we are. Okay. And we could add more stenciling if we wanted to. So, but we're going to keep this simple today because that's the way the cookie crumbles. Let me just straighten that up so that you're not on the wonk. Let's see if we can get this to sit nicely for everyone. And now I am going to revert to my gel medium. We're going to have another happy dance. It might be 2 pots that go in the bin today. Hee hee! I know. For those that are not used to watching me, I am desperately trying to use up product that I have. It still needs a bit more in there because I have trolleys full of this stuff, and I know it's a nice problem to have and that many people would welcome it, but it does get to the point where you just need to clear the clutter, so you can see what you're up to. So I am using the matte gel medium, ladies. This does not dry clear. This dries opaque, so just be aware that anything that squidges out will be white on your project, so you need to remove it. So that piece is going to go there. She says. Thankfully I've used gel medium, haven't I? Right, so in the die cut pack there is the paper cutouts pack. There are some balloons. They come in assorted sizes. And I'm just going to pop that under there. I knew there was a reason. Right, here we are. Okay, so this is a second one. I think these were the 2 smaller ones in the set. There we are. That one can go there. Let's just give that a nice little push down. And this is why you have to have a bit of everything. I know. Who would have known that you needed everything? But sometimes you just do. So we've got a subtle sparkle in the background. Yeah. That one can go there. go there. Yeah. In fact, I want it up a little bit, so let me just clear some of that gel medium out of the way, because as I say, it will. There we are. So we've got 5 little hot air balloons in here. Now let's clear that up, let's clear that up, let's clear that up. But it's still, yeah, and you could stick like that. You could put one in, and as I say, date of birth, colour it appropriately, do a smarter frame, just put it into a pre-bought frame will work just as well. Okay, just because I've gone sort of semi-grungy doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. Okay. So these are a mixture of the paper cuts and also pieces I've fussy cut from the collection. There we are. But it's just going to make it a little altogether just a little bit more pretty by layering these pieces in. Let me think what I did. There we are. So I'm just building up some pretty corners in amongst by doing this, ladies. I think I'm going to go like that, and I don't have a problem with them hanging off the frame partially. It won't, it doesn't matter. That piece can go into there like that. We might add another one of those, tuck that in there. That piece can tuck into there. Okay, so let us, and this is why I'm going to use my hot glue gun, because it's just going to be a bit quicker for doing this. Okay, and I can add just a little bit of texture at the same time. Now you could add other, all sorts of other things onto here as you wanted to. There isn't a right, there's absolutely no right and wrong with that. These come from the cover, so I'm aware that this isn't going to look so great from the back. But if you just put your piece into an ordinary pre-bought shadow box, you won't necessarily need to add this, but I just think it just adds an extra layer, a little bit. Makes it a little bit more feminine. Yeah, the collection is utterly timeless. It would work for so many different occasions. There is no question about it. It's amazing what a difference just adding that little bit of scrunch does to these pieces. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to even be florally correct. There we are. Well, new glue stick required, that's okay. There we are. Okay. So we've got, oh shoot, that wasn't quite what we wanted to do, ladies, because now we've got a mess there. So we're going to have to tuck that under there. That was my bad, because I dropped that piece with the hot glue on it onto there. So let's just layer those into there into there. So we've got the word adventure. And I'm going to I was going to initially going to pop it, I might actually stick it into there, actually, under and over. Let's just go for it. So this has come from the paper cut collection. There we are. Is that approximately central? 8. There we are, approximately centre, so that doesn't rub me. Now, this is one of the things that sometimes irritates me, and I will be honest, with the paper cutouts. This is not evenly cut, so the die that cut it hasn't lined up completely. So I'm just going to take that off there, and I'm going to tuck that into here. Right. I'm going to, what I will do is actually going to find another flower to go on there. I shall grab them in a minute because there's plenty in the collection. There we are. So we're going to pop that underneath there. So it says don't stop discovering. Then we can pop that where I initially intended it to be. And this is because this is still wet underneath, ladies, okay? So do not stress about things being coming off at this point. Let me just, because I've got another project entirely prepped over there. There we are. And let's tidy that. Because this is purely because I have now got a mess there. That will work. Where I've layered up those pieces, and I can pop that underneath. So this is, you'll find that this is what I do when I'm making, okay? I'm just building my layers and my details in. That's going to be too big. It's clearly going to be too big. And that's going to be too big. But I might just tuck another one of those into there. Just into that space. There we go. I never wonder why I use so much product. I don't. I know why I use a ridiculous amount of product. You know, it's easy, isn't it, when you've got so many bits and pieces? It is absolutely easy. There we are. So there we are, ladies. Let's turn that off. Okay. So let's just clear the decks, and then you can see what we've got, where we're up to, because with all of that clutter around, it's really difficult to actually see wood for trees. That can go there. If I move those out the way, move that out the way and pop it on its glue. And I don't know, I might just add, I might add some splatters into this off the live, but I'm going to let it all properly dry first. Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you very much. What on earth? Yeah, it is people saying. Let me see. So, right, okay. So I think that's people loving this collection. I have to say, I have some mixed feelings about it, because they've almost neutralised it too much. The papers are utterly beautiful, it has to be said, and from that point of view. And I have 6 or 7 projects made with it already, so it is absolutely, totally and utterly craftable. So yeah, but I think it just is, it's just pretty. And as I say, Bajda's wedding, but I think could work for sympathy with all the florals, with a cross die cut, could be new baby, change the colours up, sympathy, newborn, children's party, again bright colours for the balloons, children's birthday, wedding, anniversary, renewal, anniversary, lots and lots and lots of different options, I think, for this collection. So ladies, please stay safe. I am going to be doing a live for Pent Up on Tuesday. I'm going to be using very different elements from the collection in a completely different way. So it might well be that you that you want to watch that and see what I get on with. But I do have Pent Up products on that show. So ladies, take care, enjoy the rest of your evening, and stay safe with whatever you're doing. Bye.